Here is an 8.5-inch tire that we're replacing on the Gotrax Rival. We already removed it. The best way to remove it, tire levers, it's kind of tricky. Easier part is removing it than in reinstalling it. Obviously here's the rim. The tires are directional too, so you can see that they only go one direction. There's usually an arrow on here, but you can kind of tell with the tread marks. If it's pointing like this, you want the arrows pointing forwards. So always think about that when you're actually installing the tire. So here's the rim. This would be the back side, and this is side of us, like if we're standing on the scooter, so the tire is going to go on like this. When we took out the old inner tube, there was a piece of rubber here. You want to remove this. It's like an extra security feature. So when you buy the new inner tube, a lot of them will have these little metal washers on them, or screw. You want to take this off because you can use that on the other side. We'll show you to tighten it. It's used for some of the other scooters. 8.5-inch tires are probably some of the most difficult to replace on any scooter. The smaller the tire, the more difficult. I mean, I guess 6.5 would be harder. So what I like to do is obviously make sure I have it the right direction, and then I try to push it around the rim. Okay, these tire levers do help some, but what I'm doing is I'm just getting the first lip over. Okay, you can see it's on that lip. All right. Made sure to, obviously, inner tube's one side because it's kind of hard to pre-put the tire in there with the inner tube without damaging it. So I'm trying to show you the easier way. There is another method, but this method works out the best when you're trying to do it. So, because you obviously have to put that through there. So what I like to do is I like to do that. And then you can see here how I'm going to like push it in to the rim, but you have to make sure when you're pushing it in, because you can see now, oh look, the inner tube is so tight to the rim because it'll barely fit in there, and that's why these kind of suck. So what I like to do is I'm just going to start tucking this in all the way around. You have to make sure when you're tucking it in too, don't try to pinch anything, and you always want to see how I'm folding it. You want to make sure the direction is going up still and then in there, otherwise when you inflate it a little, it will not work to your benefit. But this is by far the safest way to do it without wrecking an inner tube, in my opinion, for the newest person doing this. So, just a moment here. Take your time, because you can see how it like kind of stretches around the rim. And it'll be kind of tricky. You know, you'll be frustrated trying to stick it in there, but I promise you, this is one of the easier methods on these smaller tires without damaging it. And you can see I'm trying to keep it consistent with how I'm tucking it in there. Like I said, you might seem like this is more difficult than the other way, but the other way, when you try to jam the tire in there in the inner tube, the odds of you damaging it are a lot higher. So you just got to shift the rim down. See how I just like push the rim down into the tire some? You can see how it's pushed in there some. So you have to kind of do that to work this in. Alright, that's where the tire levers come into play. So lift up. You gotta be careful. You know, you always want to pull over it, tire. And like I said, this is the easiest, safest way to do this. There is another way that I could show you, but this way I feel is the easiest for the novice. And then we kind of have it tucked in there. Alright. So let's see how we don't have anything in here. You have it all tucked in there. Alright, so it's less likely for us to pinch the tire. So this is where it can get tricky. Some people might recommend using zip ties as a method, where you crush the tire a little and then it pushes it around the rim. So, see I have my foot here? You have to be careful to to not wreck the inner tube. So what we're first trying to do here is get the bead around the tire. One tire lever. And then you're gonna sit here and you kind of stretch it over. So you have to keep this tire lever taut. And you're gonna stretch it over. And then you can see here how this is pressed in some. That's what you're looking for. And this is why these smaller tires can be a PETA. Because you have to know how to work your way around like this. This is where it can get real difficult. You have to be careful too to not pinch the inner tube. And you can see here how it looks. Working my way around. Alright, so this tire lever is pretty tight, so you just loosen it a little, put it back tight. And then you can't always go too far, it's what sucks. These smaller tires. And then you can see how I just flexed it over. And that's where it gets more difficult. So a trick I've learned now, see how we're pretty loose, so we're gonna have to sneak this other tire lever in here somehow. And this is where it gets tricky. Alright, so I sunk the other one in there. We push this one back up with tension. And then see, boom. The reason you want to use tire levers over screwdrivers is they're flat, less likely to damage the inner tube. So you can see how it's kind of installed. You have to watch out too, if it gets too tucked into the rim here. You have to kind of pull it up, but these don't matter as much on the tube tires. It does on the tubeless. Then we had that little screw before, or that was on the outside of the inner tube. That just helps it so the inner tube doesn't shift or get pulled out. You see here, screwing that in. Hand screw, otherwise I think they're usually like that. Then we're gonna take our bicycle pump. Attach it. I believe it's like 50 PSI for these tiny tires, which is insane, but you can see now we have air in the tire and it's replaced. And that's just one of the methods. There's other methods out there that you'll see, but I find tucking it in and going around these smaller rims like this is the safest. Otherwise, I always break inner tubes. So it might seem a little bit more frustrating just because the inner tube is too small for the rim most of the time, because you even have to stretch it over it. So that's what makes it more difficult. But this is for a Gotrax rival or any 8.5 inch tire. But look